I want to get started. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, my name is Jessica Childress, and I am the creator of the Juris P. Prudence collection. I want to introduce you to my best friends, Juris P. Prudence, Sophie, Maddie, and Izzy. They're all 11-year-old lawyers, and they live in Washington, D.C., where I live, and they are taking on a fun and interesting case that is going to change the world, or at least their community. I started writing the Juris P. Prudence book back in 2012. I love writing. I am an actual lawyer, and it is something that I do for fun, but it's also something that I've done as a way to spread a message about positivity, about leadership, and about civic engagement. So today I want to share a chapter with you from the Briefcase of Juris P. Prudence. And as I mentioned, Juris P. Prudence, she's an 11-year-old lawyer, and she lives in Washington, D.C. So in the Briefcase of Juris P. Prudence, she is taking on her first case, hopefully that will change the course of history. Staring at my bright pink backpack, bearing my name at the top, made me wonder if my parents knew that I would be a lawyer when they named me Juris Prudence. I often said my name out loud just to think about the way it sounded when the name first came out of my mom and dad's mouths. Juris Providence Prudence. People usually had two reactions to my name. First, a strange look upon hearing it, and then the immediate follow-up question, what does your name mean? My immediate response was always, it means the study of law. Green line to Branch Avenue, the conductor shouted, interrupting my thoughts. I was on the metro, kind of like a train, but it only goes through the Washington, D.C. area. I've lived in Washington my whole life, so taking the metro train was something I often did. My grandparents didn't drive, so we take the metro and the city bus everywhere. Actually, the metro everywhere. I preferred taking my bike around the city, but I was forced to take the metro if I couldn't ride my bike. We don't have a school bus in Washington, so I have to ride my bike or take the metro to get to school. I don't mind though. Getting to the National Kids Leaders Academy was always the most exciting part of my day. It was an adventure that was never the same. Whether I was watching the passengers on the train or seeing the sights of Washington on my bike, each trip to school was an adventure. This was our first day back to school after fall break, but it didn't feel like a break at all. It had been snowing in the city over the past week, and the snow was up to our knees. Over the break, instead of raking leaves, we were building snowmen and sledding down hills. Snow was still piled high on the ground, so I had to wait until it melted to ride my bike again. When I was on the metro, I would always try to guess who the different passengers were, where they were going, what they did, and whether any of them worked with the president. I always stood out from other passengers on the metro train. They were all in suits and dresses, and I was usually wearing my uniform, dark blue jeans and a Kids Leaders Academy sweatshirt. On cold days like today, I would put on my KLA baseball cap to cover my long black hair, which I usually wore in a ponytail. Gallery Place, Chinatown. This was my stop. I had to get off and transfer to the next train. My school was in Georgetown, and that was quite a hike from where I lived in the neighborhood known as Petworth in Washington, D.C. I had about 25 more minutes on the train, and then I would finally be at school. A lot of my friends asked me how I managed not to get bored on the long metro ride to school. Between dreaming up stories about the people that I saw on the metro and reading free newspapers that were given out every morning before I got on the metro, there was no way I could be bored on my metro rides. Sometimes I wished that I could stay on the train and read and daydream forever. Recently, the bad weather had caused me to ride the metro more often. During the past few weeks, my rides had been very different than usual. Most mornings, passengers sat quietly and didn't speak to other passengers on the metro, but today it sounded like a circus. It was the beginning of October, and everyone in the city was waiting on one big event, and it wasn't Halloween. It was the election of the next mayor of the city. Everywhere you looked, you saw gigantic red, white, and blue signs that read, "Vote for Sly," or "Good Little for Mayor." The election was the first week of November, and it had become the talk of the town. This morning, I was reading a story about two men running in this election, Sylvester Sullivan and Marty Goodlittle. Have you read what Slimy Sly is trying to do? Take away all healthy lunches? For kids? Is he crazy? Kids don't need healthy school lunches. Their parents can send them to school with lunch. I don't care if it's healthy or not. I don't want my tax dollars going to school lunches. Sylvester Sullivan has been a wonderful mayor for the past 10 years. This city needs him. The new guy, Goodlittle, has one tough hill to climb if he thinks he'll win this election. I've heard some pretty awful things about Sly. Rumor has it he even has a criminal past. This passenger's comment made the hair on my arm stand up straight. I didn't understand what all of the chatter was about. And then I looked down at my newspaper that I had grabbed this morning. Now I understood. As I read the headline, I could feel my face heating up. I didn't believe my eyes. Sly vows to take away healthy school lunches. Change will hurt needy kids in the city, the newspaper headline read. Foggy Bottom, last stop in the District of Columbia. That was the cue that I had arrived at my stop. I didn't have time to be angry or nervous about the comment regarding Sly's criminal past. It was 7:45, and I had to be at school in 15 minutes. I had no idea how I was going to make it to school in 15 minutes with a foot of snow on the ground. But I had no choice if I wasn't going to get a week-long detention for being late to class. With my newspaper in hand, I sprinted to the Kids Leaders Academy. So I see that we have a few other viewers. We have Ryan from Maryland, or April from April. Hi, how are you, April? If you have any questions, I know that you've joined, please shoot them our way, and we are going to try our best to answer all questions at the end of the reading. I arrived at the doorway of Miss Nicholson's class at 7:58. I was out of breath, my feet were wet, and I realized that I had forgotten my lunch at home, but it didn't matter. I had 2 minutes before the clock struck 8, and I was on time. Last week, Miss Nicholson told me that if I was late to her class one more time, I would get a detention for a week. Most students at KLA called Miss Nicholson Nitpick Nicholson. She would give you a detention for just about anything. Sneeze too loudly, detention. Talk without raising your hand, detention, and clean off the whiteboard before leaving the classroom. Arrive late to class, detention for a week. You're cutting it close, Miss Prudence, Miss Nicholson warned me as I limped to my seat. I couldn't even say, I know, Miss Nicholson. I thought that if I said anything, I might just pass out because I didn't have any air left in my lungs. The clock struck 8, and Miss Nicholson wasted no time getting started. I was just hoping I could catch my breath before she called on me. Please get your homework out. Whenever Miss Nicholson directed students to get their homework out, she scanned the room with her eyes, squinted, and pushed her large red frame glasses up on her face. She was looking for anyone who did not have his or her homework. I reached into my book bag, looking for the paper I had stayed up until midnight writing the night before. I searched the front pocket of my bag. Nothing. I looked in the back pocket. Nothing. This was not good. Miss Prudence, is there a problem? Miss Nicholson hovered over me as I frantically searched for my research paper. Yes, there was a problem. There was a major problem. I couldn't find my homework. I was still catching my breath. My feet were wet and cold from my journey to school, and my lunch was still on the kitchen counter. I couldn't tell Miss Nicholson all of those things, or I would be guaranteed a detention for what she called being discourteous. Miss Nicholson was big on courtesy. Miss Nicholson, everything is fine, but I think I left my homework at home, I somberly replied. Everyone in my class was staring at me. Miss Nicholson, Miss Prudence, late assignments are not accepted in my classroom. But Miss Nicholson, I have the assignment. I just need one more day to turn it in. 1 letter grade deducted, Miss Prudence. Not fair. I realized what I had just said and immediately regretted it. One thing that I had learned during the last 2 months in Miss Nicholson's class is that you never backtalk. What was that? Nothing, Miss Nicholson. Miss Prudence, you and I will be spending this week and next week together. Oh, and don't forget to clean off the whiteboard before you leave class this morning. Gosh, this was not good. Not good at all. Spending time with Miss Nicholson meant good quality detention time. Detention meant before school detention meant that I had to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to make it to school by 7. If there was one thing in my life that I absolutely detested, it was waking up early. I didn't even consider the fact that I would have to tell my grandparents that I had received another detention. Detention with Miss Nicholson would begin the next day, bright and early at 7 a.m. I couldn't concentrate during the rest of the class. Other thoughts were flooding my mind. When will my socks dry off? How am I going to explain to Granny and Granddaddy that I got another detention? Will Sylvester Sullivan win the election and take away healthy lunches for kids? How on earth did I forget my homework? Did I do all that work just to get a B? What am I going to eat for lunch today? I tried my best to concentrate for the remainder of the class, but it was difficult. Miss Nicholson's history class was my favorite class. Miss Nicholson was a tough teacher, but she was a great historian. She had personal stories about every historical period that we studied. Today, we were studying voting rights in the United States. I was an expert on this topic, and Miss Nicholson would find this out tomorrow once she read my awesome research paper. Does anyone know which historical women are famous for helping women get the right to vote? I quickly raised my hand and shouted, Susan B. Anthony. Miss Prudence, please wait until you're called upon to answer a question. Yes, you're right. Susan B. Anthony is one. Any others? I raised my hand again. This time I waited for Miss Nicholson to give me the green light to answer. Miss Nicholson acknowledged my hand and I quickly answered. Sojourner Truth. Miss Nicholson nodded. Very good, Miss Prudence. It looks like someone has been doing her homework. I like getting the right answers. This is why I always did my homework and studied before coming to class. I've always been studious. When I was younger, everyone was amazed at how much I loved to read. When I was 2 years old, I wasn't reading kids' books. I was reading newspapers and history books. By the age of 4, I was writing long stories and reading them to my grandparents. My grandparents then decided to enroll me in the Kids Leaders Academy, a school for academically advanced children. I have been a student at KLA since I was 5. Students, tonight read chapter 5 and 6 of your textbooks. We will be discussing these chapters tomorrow. As I wrote down my assignment, I thought about another assignment that I had for tonight, and that was to find out everything I could about the upcoming election. So that, my friends, is the end of chapter 1. We're now at chapter 2, and I thank everyone who joined along with us today. Thank you. Welcome to all of our new viewers. Hopefully you had a chance to hear the majority of the chapter's reading. If we have any questions, why don't we go ahead and get them in the comments? If you have a question, just go ahead and shoot it along in the comments. Any questions? Well, seeing that we have none, I'm going to encourage our viewers to keep in touch with me. If you do have any questions, you can shoot them over at info@jurispprudence.com. Trent, why don't you drop that link for us so that our viewers can reach Juris P. Prudence, our team, and we will answer any questions that you have. So Trent, go ahead and drop that link for us. Also, let's see, we do have a question. What advice do you have? Thank you, Portia. What advice do you have for young writers? For young writers, I'd say the best advice that I have is to start writing. It doesn't matter what you're writing, whether or not you want to publish it or just keep it for your own reading and enjoyment. You should always write. Writing is a skill that you need to hone every day. We can never become perfect writers, but we can always get better. I'm not a perfect writer. I wrote this book in 2012, so long ago. And I still find things that I would change in this book if I could, but I so enjoyed writing it. It was a beautiful process to write it, and it's something that I love sharing. But then there's other writing that I just write for myself. So I would write as much as you can, as often as you can, and about anything that you can. So thank you so much for that great question, Portia. Do we have any other questions? Okay, so if you do have questions, you can drop them and you can send me an email, our team an email at info@jurispprudence.com, and someone from the team will get back to you with an answer to your question. You can ask about the book. You can ask any questions that you have about any other jurisprudence products, any other jurisprudence books. We will be back here next Wednesday at 3 p.m. EST to go and talk about the next chapter, to read the next chapter of the Briefcase of Juris P. Prudence. And we will be also allowing you to share your